Oh, hello, and welcome to Dente Rigamortis. I'm Review Cultist.
And I'm Dr. Leviathan.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta. Tonight we have Snuff by Stephen Shorter. So, just to let you know ahead of time, we're not discussing Snuff, the pornographic stuff. We're discussing a creepypasta centered around a snuff film.
Yeah, it's the title.
Yeah.
And also, there is no text version.
At the moment. Yeah, at the moment of this recording, there is no text version of this. You can listen to a fine reading of it by the Drunk and the Spooky on YouTube. And in fact, we will have a spliced-in audio recording I did while I was down in Gen Con and got to talk to those folks about this. So we will have a multitude of opinions about this story by the end of this episode. So, and of course, for those of you not in the know, creepypasta are scary short stories that get copied and pasted across the internet. They're essentially the campfire stories of the next generation. It's like why I like to think about them. But yes, going on to the story of Snuff. It's done up, it's spliced into 4 parts: a letter, a transcript of a video, a letter, and then a final transcript. The first letter is that of a man who is, his name's redacted, but there's a part in the letter that kind of hints to his name being Bry, or says like a nickname to him, or like a short form of his name as Bry. So I guess his name's Bry or something. It was one thing that was weird when they didn't redact that part of it. They redacted everything else.
That would have been redacted, but
yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So
they missed it.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's not a huge deal, I suppose.
Yeah. The man is obsessed with pornography, and is in prison at the time of this writing, this story.
It's a pornography store. I was buying pornography.
Yes. And he's writing this letter to a unspecified correspondent, or the reader at this, about the tape that kind of centers around his current predicament, like why he's in jail. And he goes about he starts telling the story about him going to his friendly neighborhood porn dealer,
and like the illicit porn dealer.
Yeah, not the legit stuff, more like the illegal stuff. And goes into going to the guy's place, which was his former establishment. Now he just lives in the apartment above it because it's closed down because of the internet. And the guy gives him this tape that has a blank label and stuff, and he's just like, "What is this?" And it's like, "Oh, you're gonna love this. It's really messed." It's like, "How messed?" Messed. So, the guy kind of trusts him because he's like, first off, he knows where he lives, so if he cheats him, he's kind of fucked. And the other
and also clearly this guy is a good customer.
Yeah,
this is something that the letter doesn't really cover, because this guy's obviously your best customer.
Yeah.
Because from the sounds of it, the guy doesn't have a lot of other customers.
Yeah.
And this guy is, fanatically obsessed with porn.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't fuck him over because,
exactly. That would be bad business.
Now I don't get any of your business.
Exactly. How will I feed my ferrets?
Well, the ferrets are fine. How does he feed himself? Because the ferrets, once he dies, the ferrets will just eat him.
Yeah. You'll have to listen to the reading, or at some point read the story to find out about that. So, goes home and goes to his late mother's room, where there is a working VCR and TV, because his isn't working, and pops it in, starts watching it, and it is essentially a video that is a woman, like a snuff film. The woman is there's some weird video, some weird scenes. Then it's in a studio area where she takes off her clothes and gets horribly butchered by the camera guy with a hammer. Yeah, hammer. And so and what's more is that he recognizes who the woman is, and then it kind of cuts to the first transcript, which describes what transpires in a more clinical fashion, almost like an SCP Foundation kind of entry, where it goes into the description of the video, scene for scene, but not in any kind of emotional detail, just this happens. This happens.
That's what a transcript is, right?
No, that's what I mean. Yeah. So I'm not going to go into full detail about it because it's just a bunch of creepy scenes of this how it plays out, like where this girl is being walked into a woods and stuff like that, and then she's in this room, seemingly on the second floor of a building that overlooks a forest, and then the guy kills her in this weird ritual way. So then the second letter kicks in, and it's about the jailed man, Bry, and his connection to the woman. And it turns out the woman was a girl that, when he was in high school and he got beat up a lot, would kind of like nurse his wounds and like read Lolita to him in the park. So he had a crush on this girl. But she was kind of the town floozy, and
I believe the correct term is town bicycle.
Right. She's the town bicycle. Her dad kills himself and leaves her with a ton of debt, so she can't really sustain it and stuff.
Then she turns into the town rent-a-bike.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, she hooks up with this guy, this one rich kid who's kind of abusive, and the main character tries to confront him about it because he feels he's in love with this girl, and gets his ass kicked and goes to the hospital. And there's some letters that are passed between him and the girl over while he's in the hospital, and then as he's about to finish recovery, she goes missing. And so years pass, assumedly. And then he's back to the tape, and he looks over it like multiple times because he's like trying to find a reason, or find out where the place is, like any clue. And he finds it in there's a water tower in the woods. When the cameraman, who's known as Mr. Crow, in the credits of the video, looking out at the woods and stuff. So this kind of like catches something. So he goes down to his basement, grabs a bunch of like old photo albums, and finds a photo of a field trip he was at back in high school that showed a forest with a water tower that's exactly the same. So he goes to this place, goes to the cemetery, the Civil War cemetery that they went to the field trip, parks there, goes into the woods, tries to triangulate where the place is, and finds this old decrepit 70s style mansion in the middle of the woods, abandoned, with creepy angles. And at this point, the story goes into very loving detail about the setup of this place. And so he goes upstairs to the second level and finds the studio. It's been long since abandoned, clinically abandoned. Like the guy's left no trace. Or no DNA trace, as far as you can tell.
Well, no trace. Like, there's nothing in the room. It's, like, sterile clean.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Surgically clean.
Yeah, that's the word they use. Sorry. I use sterile because it's the same damn thing.
Right. And so he doesn't find anything, so he goes downstairs and sits down on the steps for a while, and a wind kicks in because there's no doors or windows in this, like, glass or anything, so it just kind of comes right through. And the wind happens to open up a door in the wall that goes down to the basement.
Well, a door and a door.
Yeah, a door and a door.
Because he opened up a door and it looked right on a bookcase. But it's empty, so why is it a bookshelf? That's the part that bothered me. It's like, it's empty. It's not a bookshelf. It's just shelves in a door. Really, it's a closet, or, you know.
Yeah, no, I get you, yeah.
So the fact that you jump to the conclusion that it's a bookshelf, I'm like,
this is it.
you gave it away.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I can see that. And it swings open and reveals the secret door passage to the basement. And he goes down, and this is where he finds the killer's true, like, his lair, essentially. There's filing cabinets full of tapes, and these ones are all named with different women's names. So, kind of showing this, like, serial ritual, like, cycle of death that of snuff films that this person's been creating over years. And he finds the tools and stuff like that, and is trying to find more in details about, like, where... Chabat or something is her name, is her last name. And then he hears something and turns around with the knife he had with him the whole time, and it's the cops. And the cops are there, and the SWAT, and they're just full on, like, searching the whole area for stuff. And he gets arrested for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Also possibly being, like, spied on by the government because he downloaded the wrong thing. Is what the guy kind of assumes. So. He's in jail now. Mr. Crow is still at large. They are still they're still digging up bodies around this place.
And he's in jail for other shit he had in his apartment, like in his house, not because they think he did it because he's Caucasian and the guy who made the film is clearly, African American. Yeah, because of what the video does show of Mr. Crow, he looks like he's a black man. So, well, you see his hand.
Yeah. but they do try to like pin it on him, but then his lawyer points out that obvious problem, consistency. And so, but he's still in jail because of all the illegal stuff he has in his own home. And so he sits there, essentially just writing this letter about like how like he's a messed up individual, but the real monster is still out there, and they're still like digging up stuff around the house. And so it's like kind of a cautionary tale kind of thing, or cautionary ending with like the real killer, the real hunt killer or whatever is still out there at large, and he might get you. And then
not me.
Well, yeah, no. The story ends with...
I have a boy's name.
Doctor. Anyway, so wow, actually that sounded really bad. I'm sorry to all the female doctors out there. But yeah, so and then it leaves off with another final transcript of another fragment of the video that shows Mr. Crow watching the girl from afar at like a bus stop or something, and then goes back into the woods, and her and Mr. Crow are looking at a body of a previous victim, but she seems to be kind of like smiling and cheerful on the video, and then it just kind of cuts out, and so we're left with this creepy video description. So. And that's how the story ends. So the story, like I said, is by Stephen Shorter. It's read by The Drunk and the Spooky, which is the reading channel of the Drunk and the Ugly podcast. Sam from Drunk and the Ugly does the reading, and Matt did all the editing for it. I loved the audio reading of it. It was very well done. The story was very creepy and very kind of gritty, and actually I kept getting this like True Detective vibe off of it, and I do mention it in my discussion with the guys in Gen Con. But yeah, it felt like it was another one of those like kind of realistic horror stories of serial killers. It also reminded me of a movie, of a found footage film called the Poughkeepsie Tapes. I'm sure I said that wrong. About a serial killer on the loose, but the police find all his murder footage and stuff, and it's just going through like a mockumentary style thing of like the police describing this guy's like long reign of terror, and then splicing it in with creepy audio or creepy video feed of some of his kills, or how he does stuff. So I also really liked the letter. The one thing with the letters, the letter style, I thought it was really effective. Although some of the details were a little too lovingly done, but at the same time, I really enjoyed that.
There was there was a lot of
description.
Detail that I just can't picture anyone putting in a letter.
Yeah, but
like the fucking ferrets and shit like that.
Although I think it's also kind of in the same vein as like Lovecraft and other writers like that do this kind of like horror story based off like with letters, where they put a lot of loving detail into like the atmosphere in the story or in the setting of the story, and I really enjoyed like that stuff while I was listening to it. With like I felt like I was unfortunately in this dingy place with this guy, this fat porn dealer and his like creepy ferrets running around his home with discarded pizza boxes. And then we were in the mansion. I really liked the descriptions of the mansion itself.
Yes, and the descriptions were fine. Mm-hmm. The problem was they seemed out of place for the style of story. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're writing a certain way, then stick to it. Yeah. If you can't, tone down the good writing, it was well written, then don't write it in this way. Yeah. Don't write it as it's supposed to be a letter. Write it as, just a fucking story. Yeah. That's really, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm aware that Dracula has the exact same setup, but also has a lot of detail. But I mean, that's a little different. We're talking about a novel versus a story, like a little short story. So
it's actually funny you bring up Dracula because that's what Travis and Matt actually brought up when they're in the other discussion. Was that
we're well read, and you're not.
Thanks. Just because I read Lovecraft.
I'm just fucking with you. Yeah. But I
like to think of myself as the layman.
It's oh no, you're totally not. You're very well read. You just read different things than I do. Yeah. Like although it is like that, because it's in a short story, I kind of want you to nix some of it, like make it excessive more detail, like fucking ferrets. I don't need to know about fat porn dealers' ferrets.
Yeah.
at least if you're going to try and present it as a letter, because I just can't see someone putting that in a letter.
Yeah.
Not in this day and age. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe once upon a time, like when Dracula, but not now. It's unrealistic.
It's unrealistic in terms of, like... Yeah,
letter writing is practically dead these days.
Yeah. That said, he is in jail and writing this...
Yes, but, I mean, most people don't have practice writing letters, so, they just wouldn't put in that amount of detail. Mm-hmm. I'm not expecting it in this story.
Yeah.
Because of the letter format. So, it in my opinion, it shouldn't be there.
Okay.
But, that being said, it did actually, help put you in the in the moment.
Yeah.
It was very well, the story would have suffered if it had been taken away. So I really just think that the story should have been written in a different format. That's one man's opinion, but it's me, so I think it's a very important opinion.
Fair enough.
And also, okay, so he's being followed by, cops or maybe FBI because of... Okay, he goes into an abandoned mansion... And this is when they pounce?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be being followed by, like, a couple of agents, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, at any given time, maybe two.
Not an entire SWAT. Like, unless they just happen to be, like...
SWAT, like, yeah, they are not... And they're not going to swarm you at some place like this.
Yeah.
They're going to, like... They're either going to nab you in your home... Or they're going to nab you just as you leave because they've pinned down your routine and like, okay, he's going to leave at 8:03
and go to that porn shop.
And we're going to fucking, we're just going to fucking nab him. Or, like you just, kind of said, they'd nab him at the porn shop and get two birds with one stone.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if this guy is selling his...
This guy sold a snuff film, man.
Yeah.
Like, I mean... If he's selling a snuff film, what other shit does he have?
And he even mentions that the guy sells like some really dark stuff, like or his.
Well, and I mean, where did our narrator or our letter writer get the stuff that he's in jail for?
Yeah,
probably from the fucker down the
I also did like the little quip, like at the beginning of the story, it mentions like when he was incarcerated and stuff that like and talking about his dealer. The guy like just blew his own head off before the cops made it through the door so I guess it went to show like how deep this guy was in this stuff, and so he just wasn't willing to go to jail for it.
And then
the easy way out.
Yeah, and also it's almost the story is written almost like we're supposed to have sympathy for this guy, but he's in jail because of porn he had.
Yeah.
Now. The first place my mind goes with that is child pornography.
Yeah, and whenever that comes up...
Like, and I mean, don't get me wrong, like, yeah...
I mean,
there are prudes in the world, but they don't make things illegal for the most part. Like, unless there's a really good reason, like, hey, the kid's under 18.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's just kind of like... How are you, like, you're trying to make this guy a sympathetic character, but he's in jail because of the porn he had, which means he had some fucking...
Like, weird shit.
Yeah, he didn't have weird shit. He had illegal shit.
Yeah.
And that shit is illegal for a reason.
Yeah. It's very possible.
So
99% possible that this guy had like child pornography and other stuff that is illegal. Like, I know in some states it is very legal for to have like bestiality.
Yeah, and my knowledge of but I mean, my mind goes to child porn.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, okay, and you're trying to like this guy's supposed to be a sympathetic character, and he like. I just cannot go to sympathy for this guy.
I really wasn't... Yeah, I didn't really feel much sympathy for this guy. I mean, he's obviously troubled. He it has like some issues.
I got no problem with a porn addict. I mean,
But again, why he's in jail, and not still in jail, not out of jail after for just having some porn or being in the wrong place at the wrong time. He's in jail because of some of the like what we just mentioned. Like he's in there because he had some really illegal stuff.
And I mean, and that's where I have like, I can have absolutely no sympathy for the guy. Because, I mean, you know what? If he's a porn addict, I can have sympathy for that guy. Because, you know, that's not a horrible thing.
No. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, like, he doesn't really, I don't think he really even tries to, like, get any sympathy, like, vote from him.
No, he doesn't, but he's the main character.
So we're supposed to become...
Yeah, you're supposed to sympathize or empathize with him, and, like, it's impossible to, for me.
Yeah.
Like, once I give it, like, half a second thought, I'm like, oh my god, this guy isn't not a murderer, but my god, he's certainly
creepy as
he's certainly up on the deserves to be in jail ladder.
Yeah. I think another thing that actually the character works in the spot is because, like, yeah, he's a creepy scumbag who has some illegal shit, but he's not as bad as Mr. Crow.
Well, and the thing
he's
is,
still out there.
The writer never really... I never got the impression that the writer tried to make us sympathize with him.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that he's the main character, so we are supposed to.
Yeah.
And, like... Yeah, you're right. It does work in this instance, because, you know, no one asks us to sympathize with them. Yeah. But I found it weird that I'm like, wow, listen to this. Obviously, the main character is... Man, I just can't fucking do that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, you're conflicted because you're reading this guy's, like, testimonial essentially, or this guy's, like, listening to it in this case. We will have once the story is actually posted out somewhere, I will make sure to track it down and put it in the description below for the podcast. So, but yeah. So did you enjoy the story though, as it was? Again, it's a very dark story, but I kind of like it for how, like, kind of creepy...
Yeah, but 8mm was a great movie.
I didn't see that still.
Yeah, you did. Yes and no. I mean, there are, like, the logic lapses that I just can't overlook, like the whole SWAT team coming down. Like, I can't believe that. Yeah. So it kind of, like, as it happens, it's... Boom! Story shattering.
Yeah.
The whole thing is just like
it's too convenient. Like,
exactly. It's wrapping the story up too quick.
Like, maybe if he'd gone home and then, like, got nabbed there or something.
Yeah, if he'd gone home and they, like, fucking had gone in after him, because, like, okay, yeah, maybe they are following him, and then
I think
they go in, he goes home, they go in, they find the same stash. You know, he's trying to, you know, he's thinking, okay, I'm going to, you know, figure it out and I'm going to find this guy. And they're like, hey, you're suspected of a lot of fucking murders now.
Yeah.
You know, we've got the evidence to fucking arrest you.
Yeah. I think another thing that this actually, were like, for like that plot hole kind of thing, we never, like, they kind of just come out of the blue. So, like, it would have been really good to have,
totally.
It would have been really good for them to, like, for Steven Shorter to have put in, like, maybe a foreshadow, like, maybe, like, he knew, he had an idea, like, there was, like, a suggestion that he was being followed by somebody, and maybe he thought it was Mr. Crow, and then it turned out it was actually just the cops.
Yeah,
and maybe not so many cops, because unless those cops, like all the SWAT team and the cops and stuff like that, had been notified of some of the actual building itself and about all, like, the stuff that was going on there, and they were just he just happened to be there at the wrong time while they were doing a search and stuff. There's no reason for that SWAT team and whatnot to be there, other than to be have a search party out for, like, the property.
Well, and
that's the only thing. You
don't search a property with SWAT.
Exactly.
You know,
there's one thing I did bring up in the other discussion. The story is very based in, like, kind of a real world kind of issue. But I did feel like there was almost, like, kind of a preternatural element to it. Like, not supernatural, but, like, there was definitely a weirdness to it. Outside of the obvious. But, like, the crows that kind of are always there, like, watching. There's this, like, element of, like, a ritualistic, like, esoteric kind of feel to this, what this guy's doing, what Mr. Crow's doing. It almost felt like...
Well, you'll find that with it.
Yeah, with a lot of serial killers. Yeah. Like, it wasn't quite a cult, but, like, there was a very esoteric... I just feel like it's like True Detective, where, like, you kind of think that there's some kind of, like, preternatural element to it. Even if it's not there, you kind of get that vibe.
I didn't.
You didn't know? Okay.
No. I thought that the Crow, like, all of the Crow stuff was really just out of place. Not with the Mr. Crow, but with, like,
the crows all, like, staring down.
Kind of the crows and shit. I was just like...
It's like, almost like it's adding in this...
This is out of place.
So you thought that was out of place more than, like, just adding a...
Yeah, I wasn't like, oh, maybe it's supernatural. I was like, this is fucking out of place because, I mean...
Okay, yeah.
You know... It's just not how a murder of crows behaves, really.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and, like, why are they acting this weird? Like, this element may not have to be in this part of the story, because the story is not...
because...
Nothing else is hinted otherwise.
Yeah, it's all grounded in reality, so why are you having these crows cawing, like...
Yeah.
For no reason. It's just, yeah. For me, it's like, don't put that shit in, because it doesn't need to be there, because your story isn't supernatural, and... Just whenever you have crows and, you know, that weird behavior where it's like...
You're trying to hint at something.
Where it's hitting your points in your story, that's supernatural.
Yeah, and this really isn't a supernatural creepypasta. It's a realistic...
It's a grounded in reality, it's a...
Criminal, like horrible Criminal Minds, like, episode, or, again, in the vein of True Detective kind of thing. It's not really a... actually, again, they mentioned Twin Peaks was something that they got out of because of that preternatural part. And, like, just, like, the creepy, ritualistic killings. But, yeah, like, it's all grounded in reality. There's no real reason to add on this element. Crows, the element of crows that are acting funny, essentially.
Yeah. Well, and it's... Like,
it's in the video,
the
so
only element. But these crows are the only element.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it could have so easily just been removed that why wasn't it?
Yeah.
Is kind of my thing.
Yeah, okay.
Because...
Yeah, looking at it now, like...
It's out of place, and the story doesn't really suffer by their inclusion,
it's
but
just another thing.
Would have been enhanced by their exclusion.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Like, or maybe, like, not have them act as weird. Like, maybe have them, like, they were just circling around and then the cop, like, they were shoot off.
Well, I mean, fuck. Crows hang out.
Near carry-on. So they are carry-on birds, so...
Yeah.
Like, they could have been a good, like, marker for, like, for the discovery of some of the bodies and stuff. But we don't get that. So, yeah, I do actually kind of... I see that what you're talking about, where, like, maybe their exclusion would have been better. And, like, the supernatural element... The seemingly preternatural, because it's not really supernatural, but it's, like, downplayed, could have just been removed. And this would have been just as fine and dandy without it.
Exactly. Like, dedicate yourself to the type of story you're writing. Don't, you know, don't try and... add an element.
Yeah.
That being said, did it break the story? No. You know, like, it's not like the crows were like the SWAT team coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Where it just, you know, completely took me out of it. That being said, I still like the story. Mm-hmm. It was fine. It worked. I actually appreciated the fact that we had a porn addict as, like, our main character. Just, it's not something you see.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on that.
Yeah, it's kind of like having, like, not a villain, but like the non-hero type telling the story.
Well, it's just a matter of, like, bam, he's a porn addict.
Yeah.
Why? Because it facilitates the story. Mm-hmm. And because it's a thing.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. I appreciated it. But, yeah, so...
Okay.
That's my stance on the story, but it may have also stemmed from the reading. I don't want to get on Sam and Matt's dick too much here, but the reading was well done. The ambient sounds were in there. But yeah, so I don't know if I like the story as much as I did because of the reading,
or because of the content.
Because it was a decent story. I might have hated this story if I had read it.
Okay,
that's entirely possible. I don't think so.
It is generally why I read the stories before I listen to a reading. Like, I use the readings as a catch up,
a plot refresher.
Yeah. So this actually was your first reading, I think, right? Of a creepypasta? You've listened to the other ones? Okay. Well, okay, then I was gonna say, like, how was this one like compared to other ones that you listened to then?
Oh, well, like I said, it was good. It was well done. and it definitely enhanced the story as opposed to, just leaving it blah or, making it worse, because, that's a scary thing.
Yeah.
That can happen.
It has.
But, yeah, the reading was fine. It was awesome, actually, but, it's a reading of a story. You can't really say too much about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And at some point, like I said, we'll have, once the actual story is posted somewhere, we will add it to the description. So right now, I'm going to insert the Gen Con discussion we had, because I think we're pretty much done our opinion of it. And it will be right here. Oh, hello, and welcome to Dente Rigamortis, the travel edition.
A travelogue. Welcome, fair traveler. Welcome to our world. Can I get you a flask of ale?
We're in the mysterious land known as America.
Indiana. Erie, Indiana.
And
I am Review Cultist. And with me today, we have...
Hi, I'm Matt from The Drunk and the Ugly.
Hi, I'm Travis from The Drunk and the Ugly.
Yes, so I decided to travel down to Gen Con and see what that was all about.
You can hear music from the Gen Con here.
Yeah.
So enjoy that.
Yeah.
Enjoy this BGM.
Yeah. And do a discussion of a creepypasta with Matt and Travis from Drunk and the Ugly in real life, for reals.
Yes. We're actually here. He knows we exist.
For rizzles.
Or maybe nothing exists. Maybe we're all an illusion in your head.
Or the illusion of the dream of some small child in a coma.
Yes. Yes. As we all know, Cops crossed over with X-Files, was crossed over with Chicago Hope, which crossed over with Homicide: Life on the Streets.
Which crossed over with SVU.
Yep. Yeah, nothing exists.
Yeah.
And also Cops crossed over with reality.
So,
with that.
And vis-a-vis, reality is fake.
Yeah.
Yes. So what the hell are we talking about?
We're going to talk about a special little creepypasta that was brought to my attention by Matt, called Snuff.
Yes, a short horror story by Stephen Shorter.
Yes.
Is it Stephen Shorter because his name is shorter than the short horror story? Or is it the actual name Stephen Shorter?
Nobody knows. It is a mystery.
It's spooky.
Spooky. It says no, it's creepy.
Oh, it's creepy.
It's not spooky pasta. Go for it.
Yeah, sure. Won't go into the full-on rundown because I'm going to be doing that with Dr. Leviathan when I get back.
Also, The Rundown was a movie with The Rock. We can't talk about that. It's not a horror movie.
I don't know. He had that baseball bat.
That was Walking Tall.
It's a Rock movie. They're all the same. Except for the Tooth Fairy one. And I only know that one's different because he has wings.
Yeah, it's true. He still got a baseball bat in that one.
Suffice to say, if I decide to keep this part in, you can go check out the reading of the creepypasta Snuff from Drunk and the Spooky on their YouTube channel.
On their YouTube channel. It's also on our main site.
Yes, and it will be in the description below wherever this gets posted.
Yes.
So, I guess just first impressions about the story. I read it and then I listened to it by your reading, and yeah, it was just it gave me definitely a strong mental image of what this guy was going through, and
it has very good descriptive imagery for sure.
And definitely has that kind of gritty realism darkness to it. There isn't anything inherently supernatural to it. It's kind of like True Detective.
Travis was saying that just before we came here.
My first impression is just wow, this is really dark and really kind of creepy, but not for any supernatural means aside from the interspliced video description that is given, where it's they're static and it's kind of an creepy artsy film thing going.
Yeah, but I mean honestly, their static is this guy's bad at editing videos.
Yeah, exactly.
He's too busy doing the murderizing.
Yeah.
Although he's good enough to cut himself out of the frame because he's not an idiot.
Not quite.
Not quite. There's still we still know it was
We know he's African American. That's about it.
Sure, it wasn't just a gloved hand.
No, he has a body. He has you can see it in...
I don't know. Maybe you can get it confused. I'm stroking my non-existent beard.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'll probably have Dr. Leviathan and I have a full discussion, and I'm sure I'll be trying to feebly defend myself, because I'm sure he'll read it and be like, oh, what is this? Unless I'm wrong. But yeah, let's see what you guys had to say about it. So,
the True Detective one is very good in that I feel like I didn't get creeped out, I didn't get any sense of dread or horror. It just felt like an introduction to a series, specifically almost Twin Peaks or, True Detective, that type of supernatural detective one that has that basis in reality, that as you go on, things get more bizarre and more apparent that something is wrong with the world. It felt like an introductory scene or even an introductory episode to a new intellectual property. Here's the story. Here's somebody receives the letters from this individual explaining what happened. He's in here because they just have to find something to get him out, to keep him out so the spore doesn't spread, and somebody's like, I have to figure out what's going on. Imagery was good. Sound effects, I never read it, I only listened to it. The sound effects that we added and that Sam added actually helped kind of... Sam just read it. Well, that Mr. Campen added actually helped increase the enjoyability of it. It gave you, on top of hearing the words, which are beautiful words and kind of a good put together, it adds that added depth to it to kind of give it a little bit of an oomph.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's Stephen Shorter. Stephen Shorter is he already gets a lot of marks above a lot of stories on the show because he puts a lot of editing work into his stuff. It's very well constructed. It's very most of the time we give stories points for being literarily competent. This one is at least above average.
Yeah.
He evokes very good imagery and all the things he talks about. The characters feel very realized. Even the old man that runs the porn shop, he goes into detail about talking about how he's an old man. His shop went out of business because video shops don't exist anymore, but he still sells stuff. He still makes a living selling stuff from Mexico. He's got the 22 rifle that he sawed off in case the cops show up or something.
He's got his ferret that run around in his trash piles.
He really gives a lot of detail about this guy's life.
That guy's on the other side of the story. He is a single piece of it. He's the guy that delivers the letters, and he's got that much characterization to himself.
Yep. Yeah, he definitely get a lot of that in his writing and him explaining what his view of the world is, and how it's been tainted and stuff, and then why he's just kind of giving his life story to try and explain to whoever's reading the letters, that he really wasn't involved with this, but he was involved.
Yeah. He was the bystander, or
he was in the wrong place.
He was the end recipient. Admittedly, it's not like he hasn't done a lot of things wrong himself, as he does start the story off by saying, many of the things I own may be marked illegal by the jurisdiction of West Virginia.
Yeah.
But I think similarly to Travis, the story didn't really. I wasn't scared by this story. Also, sorry for the noises. Again, we were recording this in a convention hall.
Yeah.
So it's like that other one that you recorded in the park with a dog.
There's a dog?
My buddy's dog, yeah.
But in any case, I wasn't really scared by it, but I was intrigued.
Yeah.
In as much as all the things setting this up, who Mr. Crows is interesting. All the different ways he goes to this. The fact that they make it very, very clear that Karen Chabon is not his first victim and will not be his last victim.
Yeah, this. It's not it's not inherently supernatural, but there is definitely almost an occult or esoteric feel to ritual to what this guy does.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's not. It's never. He has there is a ritual to it, but I think it's not an occult thing. He's a serial killer.
Yeah.
It's a ritualized serial killer, and that it just happens to be in a very bizarre way he does it. I was thinking just a second ago, like, Deadly Premonitions feels similar, but at the same time, that is clearly more bizarre than this one. So,
or also, similarly to Twin Peaks, that like that guy will always wrap people in plastic and shove a thing in their nails and then throw them in a lake. Like this guy's whole thing.
Where's Annie?
Because Annie, okay. Watch Twin Peaks. There's a new season coming out eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, then similar to this way, like this guy's thing isn't like, when you get down to it, it's not that bizarre. Like he goes and seduces some young woman, and then like is doing something like he's gonna make a sex tape, and then like beats them to death with a claw hammer, like
or close enough to death that they can't resist, and then strings them up to a tree and barbed wire, and then something gets, and then they decompose.
Yeah, and then there's also like he brings Chobot to one of the trees that has a body there, and she's like, it was kind of confusing to me. It's like, why is she just like, she looks at it and then like is like fighting down, or like fighting either
she's sitting there and she's talking and they haven't been able to figure out what she's saying.
Yeah, it's
and
also,
that adds the esoteric strangeness to it.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, you can also think about it. Did you ever see that movie? I think it was called Mr. Smith. It was Kevin Costner was the serial killer.
Yes.
And there's the guy that watches him, and it could also be the thing, like maybe Karen Chabon also wanted to get on in this. We don't know a lot about Karen Chabon aside from she was a very loose girl, and even the main character didn't know a lot about her, because he's a shy, quiet individual who got beat up a lot in high school.
Yeah, I only knew her after
he put her on a pedestal and kind of worshipped her. Like he didn't have a healthy relationship with her either.
Yeah, it's a repugnant character that's given a backstory for you to feel sympathy for being repugnant, and then just you can tell that there's a reason he's messed up, and that it's no longer, it adds that level of like, this guy is crazy, this guy is in jail, well maybe he's telling us the truth. It makes it so he's not a unreliable narrator.
Yeah, and then it's kind of cut in the middle by the police evidence report, which describes the tape, and I kind of like the detachment from that, and I like, part of me almost wonders like if the tape was just a separate story on its own in almost like an SCP sort of fashion, just like, this is the tape, this is the contents of the tape. And these are those kinds of things.
It felt as if they were two separate things that are smashed together. It feels as if maybe, I think the narration of it feels as if he was writing it for a movie or some type of visual medium almost, because it seems as if the videotape, it feels as if when you give me a videotape for a story and you start describing it, I know there's details I'm missing and that there's details you're giving me for free. The point of like a creepypasta with a videotape, even if it's a really poor one, is for you to get details that you miss. So like being able to watch it and watching a snuff film, which you would never be able to do, I understand, but being able to see like, oh, it's clearly not a hand, that would add to creep of like, oh man, maybe it's not this guy. And then seeing the other one even just acted out with poor CGI would up the creepy factor of it and make it a little bit more. I've mentioned and we've mentioned, I wasn't creeped by it. It was it more intrigued me than scary. I think if we had a visual aspect to it, it would up the significance of it.
Yeah, like it creeps me out in that, like, some Criminal Minds episodes, or like then like kind of like serial killer, the Poughkeepsie tapes, I think it's called, is a found footage mockumentary kind of thing about a serial killer, and it has a lot of found footage. It has like footage that the guy recorded and stuff. It actually kind of reminds me a little bit of this. But that creeps me out in the fact that it's like, again, like by the end of the story, we find out that the killer, he wasn't really, he may or may not be the killer, and if that's the case, then the killer's still out there. So you're kind of left in that kind of fear of it. It's just like,
I mean, we get the thing at the. Are you talking about the man in the video?
The man in the video. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's possible, because when it actually comes to the murder part, it's just said that like there's a hammer, it moves really fast, it's a blur of motion, the camera becomes unfocused.
Yeah.
And we just kind of have the things. We just kind of have a voice.
Go for it. But yeah, like I mean, like the not so much like the video and stuff like that, but like when he goes down to the basement and he finds the cycle of tapes that this guy has made, and he's just been doing like tons of.
And it's apparent that nobody's been here for a long time. The guy cleans up very well after whatever he does.
Yeah, until the cops show up, and then
which show up right as he shows up.
Yeah, like
after he explores a House of Leaves-esque, he starts talking about the
literally a House of Leaves,
literally a House of Leaves, and then talks about the bizarre architecture, as I call it, the bizarre architecture.
Yeah, it's
It was kind of
felt
like
out of place.
There's actually one thing I didn't realize until I actually talked to Steven Schroeder. He makes a couple of references to other stories in there. One of them, there's a reference, and I can't remember exactly what it is now, but there's a reference to, if you've read the Cosby Daft story, normalpornfornormalpeople.com. There's a reference to that one, and that I think he mentions that there's a kitchen with a chair in it that's sitting and that's one of the videos that shows up on that website in that story.
Well, at some point we got to do that one too. So
yeah, that was one of Cosby Daft's earliest stories. What were you saying before I cut you off?
The when he's exploring the architecture and the house, the postmodern one with all the angles and the non-Euclidean geometry inside of it, that felt out of place to me.
Well, one of the things, it felt only out of place to me only because it used the word like non-Euclidean, because it could have just been like an old building.
Yeah,
because an old abandoned building is
creepy.
Yeah,
and it's full of musties and hallways and things like that. I think that was another problem that you hit on. He's non-Euclidean, and even though he has read Lolita and he's in jail, he seems better spoken than he should be. For a kid that was failing out, getting beat up in high school, and then finds this and then goes to jail, even if he has read Lolita 100 times, he's using words and phrases that don't strike me as something that an individual would use unless they're trying to scare you.
He feels too intellectual for...
It's one of those where I know it's a creepypasta, and reading it and hearing it read to me, I can tell it's being written in such a way to be scary. So, like, I'm writing this letter, let me explain what I saw. Oh my god, the detritus and the cyclopean, non-Euclidean, and all this stuff. I read that and I go, you're clearly trying to scare me. Simplify the words down, write it like a person that... And it would probably help a little. I don't know.
Yeah, he could... I'm willing to forgive that one because he's a shy, quiet person with no friends that reads a lot of books. He could be very well read.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do see where you're going there. But I don't have if there was more emphasis to give us that he was more of a thug or a punk, because you can like, there are people that drop out of school that are still like mathematical geniuses because they drop out and just read math books.
Yeah.
Or even like creative writers. So.
Yeah, that's a thing I'll give it, is that he can be very well spoken and very well read, especially since he doesn't have a lot to do in prison these days.
And I guess that's the other one, is I don't know the time frame between going to prison and not, and when the letters are written. Because if it is a big enough time frame for him to just sit there and read, I can accept that. It just, there doesn't.
Well, he's also been talking about like he's an individual who's like clearly in his 20s. He talks about high school as you know, a thing of whimsy, even though it was a place that sucked and where he got beaten up. But it's fond old memories.
I guess now. I don't. Yeah. And that's probably the context I missed. Is that definitely Gerlin's credence that he has had time to kind of read, write, and get a better grasp of grammar. I thought it was like he's like 18 or 20. But no. Yeah, I clearly missed that. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw it more or less. It was like in his late 20s or something. One thing that does, this is a minor thing that really kind of bugged me. So I think at the beginning of the movie, the story of the movie, he's talking about how he's like in his doing the deal or something, to get the tape, and the guy calls him Bry, but then they redact his name at the end of the story. It's just kind of like it's
Oh yeah, I never thought about that.
So it's like, is his name?
I did hear about that.
I figure his name is Brian. I mean, we don't know his last name, obviously.
To be fair, you can keep a pseudonym because it doesn't give any information about the individual. Yeah. So calling you Bry is like me calling you, Dr. Manhattan or whatever nickname you want to go by, and
Review cultist.
Yeah.
Review cultist.
It's clearly not my real name, but
I mean, you can throw that in there, and it.
But I read your driver's license. Our cultist, 6 foot ace of clubs.
What about the ace of base?
I color all of them.
Kaleidoscope. CLEI.
wow.
I'm just describing my OC.
I have kaleidoscope wings. There's one that's a fairy, and one wing is a dragon's wing, and one's a bat wing, and one's a bird's wing.
I got an angel wing and a devil wing right next to each other. They're different than the bat wing and the bird's wings.
But it's okay. It's one wing, though.
You realize you're just going to be fodder for the artwork, right? For the title card.
It's fine. You're just describing like Discord from My Little Pony at this point. Because this weird chimera that's all these things. Why do I know that? I don't even watch that show.
Congratulations, you just outed yourself as a pony.
I mean, whatever. I'm already
brony. Yeah, that shows how much I pay attention.
Yeah. I'm a cow.
You're delicious, then.
You fucker.
I love cow. I love it when it needs to be moo when I stab it with a fork.
So does that make you a bovine?
Brovine. Oh my god, I'm using that forever now. That's so stupid.
Yep. Wow. We were completely derailed.
It's fine. That's the fun parts.
That's our job.
So where were we?
The part about you thought he was a little too well read,
and the age thing, and then we were talking about the nickname,
and how
right.
I wasn't sure if
and how he's called Brian and name redacted, right? Yeah. Yeah. On the other side of things, I think one of the other things I liked about the story, which I think is kind of the reason, is one of the other reasons the story was made, is like there's this person I haven't seen since high school, and because that's one of the, I think it's kind of a twist. It's a twist on an old story of like I haven't seen this person in a while. I've come to like respect them, and oops, they're a porn star now. Not to shame any porn stars, but that's kind of like, my expectations of what you were have been vastly subverted.
Yep.
And this just took it to its natural conclusion of like, oh, you're a snuff star. Oh, you're dead. You're super dead too.
And then he goes and investigates it, or pretty much just rips himself apart, like trying to figure out where she was, like where this all happened, and then
yeah. And I think it's, I guess that is one of the things that there is a certain like almost supernatural element. Like I showed up, and then when then something happened and opened a door, and I found all the tapes, and then the cops showed up.
Yeah.
And it's like the cops showing up isn't such a big thing because it's like, oh, this dude, there's this guy who's like, he's going out of his way to get onto private property, and there's a lot of you condemn private property, and there's like even the Marble Hornets guys, when they talked about shooting all the stuff for that show, they ended up running into the cops when they were like filming in that old like factory or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not unheard of for cops to show up when it's like, oh, there's this thing going on. Yeah, although the fact that so many cops show up means that somebody tips him.
Riot hit him.
Yeah, he does mention that he may have been tipped off, or they may have been tipped off by something like he downloaded the wrong thing or something like that.
Yeah,
so they may have been monitoring him ahead of time, and they just, or like they might have also just been, the wrong place at the wrong time when the cops had finally found the headquarters of this crow dude.
Yeah.
So
I can't remember. Did he say that the porn star or the porn shop owner killed himself?
Yeah,
yes.
Before they even, right as they were knocking the door down, he blew his head off.
Right. Yeah. So there was obviously a connection there. They found that whole thing, so they knew about his relationship with that guy.
Yeah.
And so there's that's kind of one of the things that I do like, is that there's a hint at the supernatural with the weird crows that seem to be there all the time, but at the same time, all of it's explainable through like perfectly rational means.
Mm-hmm. So again, kind of like True Detective or Twin Peaks, even.
Yes. Yeah.
Twin Peaks maybe a little bit less so because they do just.
Twin Peaks is a good one because it starts out super mundane,
except for
like a couple of things.
Except for like, oh, that's the who's that lady with the log? Oh, we call her the log lady.
Yeah,
she just carries a log with her everywhere.
I see that as mundane because that's crazy people.
It's mundane. It's mundane, but it's also like kind of wacky because the town's just like, oh yeah, that's our log lady.
Yeah, it's very like eccentric, mundane.
Talk to my log.
Yeah, and then you get so used to this mundanity that when the actual things happen to make you go and question, and it's just like it ramps it up. It gives a great sense of scale.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we've been talking about a lot this weekend, is just like us keeping a good sense of scale on things and like narratives or movies.
Yeah.
It's always been popping up in our conversations.
I think that's the thing that can be said about this, is that there is even with the way that it's broken up between the letter, the evidence report, the letter, and then like the final like addendum to the evidence report, is that as strangely as it's laid out, it is paced very well, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there's a nice like you get the letter, which is like very well like constructed, and then you get like the information about the video, and then another letter, and then the final description of the video, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I liked that just to position, and I also like. I always like. It's because I love Lovecraft and Cthulhu stuff, and Cthulhu was essentially written like a letter. So it reminds me of that stuff. But I liked how it was like all written in a set of like statements in a letter format.
I can't remember what that's called. I used to know about that, but it's a style of writing that is common in Gothic, and Dracula's written like that.
Yeah.
And Mary Shelley's Frankenstein's written like that. I can't remember what the style is called, but it's useful for Gothic tales and useful for old horror because it allows your writer to embellish the event, to get their ideas out that what happens, and instead of having to rely on, describing in first person what your story is like, what you see, you're allowed to view it. You're getting a view of the story through your protagonist or your narrator's eyes, and you're able to embellish it, and whatever failings they have gets interpreted to help with the information. So like a blind, a guy that's half blind and seeing a thing won't be able to tell it, just talk about the creeping dread and the amorphous blob in front of me, or the loud keening wails and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
you get their specific sense memory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get it like in the moment, and they like try to recall it, and when they recall it, they get what they were kind of feeling more or less than what they were actually factually seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that about that. I'm trying to remember if I had anything else about this story.
So we've trying to remember I think one there okay. I will say that the story didn't scare me, but there are particular elements that did kind of unnerve me, and that's mostly because I am my weak point is weird failings in technology and distorted video effects. And that might just be because I also worked on the video and the audio for this, and so I had to actually kind of dig in and think about it and visualize what it looks like, and then make that kind of thing happen. And I know any kind of washed out or sort of distorted video. There's a really good version, a really good example of this was a thing somebody did of Rebecca Black's Friday, where all they did was posterize it a little bit and wash it out, and suddenly all the characters have no eyes anymore.
Oh God.
And whenever they open their mouths, they're just black voids because they just blurred everything and then posterized it, and the lack of it just all the contrast just blurred it together, and that's the idea I always had. That's the idea and the imagery that the words for this evoke on at least the final thing where they talk about how distorted the tracks are.
Yeah.
And just that, it's indecipherable. Our lip reading experts have been able to figure out what's been said because of the degradation of the tape.
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly that's why there's so many goddamn Slender vlogs they try to use they use distortion in that. So
they also use distortion in that because it's that's what Marble Hornets did, and they did it super good, and we can copy that formula.
And,
yeah, exactly.
And it's one of those things that it's the natural progression from old writing media, like we were talking about. You see it through the first person eyes, and now we've moved on to a technology that is film, which is, look, this is Chris, this is perfectly. You don't have to worry about an interpretation of it. And then the moment you distort that, you bring back that kind of, oh no, maybe what I've seen and what I know isn't real. Maybe this is really what it looks like out there, or maybe this is just a distortion and not. And it adds that layer of abstraction that happens when you go in first-person letter writing and stuff like that, just with a new technology form.
No, that's a good observation. I never thought about that. It adds an unreliable narrator to a narrator that should be perfectly unerring and reliable.
The all-seeing eye that will literally spit out exactly what you see, all of a sudden is no longer perfect and is just as fallible as you, and makes it scary. The same reason that's why it's terrifying when you watch a film and you can see on the monitors, like, there's a monster standing behind you and the people around there's nothing. Because our technology, we have such faith in it nowadays. We have such faith that nothing will break down, nothing will go on. The Ring, for instance, is so terrifying because your TV cuts on even though you cut it off, and it does all this stuff, and then she crawls out of the TV. There's always that abstraction, there's always that separation of the screen, and then she crawls through at that scariest point, and that's when everybody shits a brick, and it's the climax of the film.
And there's also even like a lesser version of that is when she's playing the tape at the we're talking about something completely different now. When she's playing the tape at the news station, and she's playing it forward and then winding it back, and the fly keeps going, and honestly, this is just kind of in that case, it's that the tape is a monster, and it takes the form of a tape, and it knows what rules it's supposed to follow, and it kind of follows them. So even when she's paused the tape, you see the fly's wings are still twitching.
Yeah,
and then she can actually pull the fly out of the video.
And it's just a good. This creepypasta is a good representation of how to do that in written form.
Yeah,
and it's a very good way of appropriating something that has clearly, the horror story is as old as time, and it's now appropriating information and ideals and aesthetics from television, video, and film, and taking what we've realized and what's used to scare on screen and bringing it into a short film, bringing it to everybody, and showing how one of the things that I study is how everybody tries to separate and categorize things into different aspects and media forms and stuff like that, when media in general, I am completely sure, is just this big old gross primordial ooze that just feeds off of each other and just bites one head and gets information from one and then the other one, and just constantly evolving.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all just labels.
Exactly. And that's one of the things the authors have been very clear about that I've talked to this week about one of my articles, is they can recognize that labels are a thing, but a lot of the authors I talk to don't agree with labeling. If only because they feel it creates a delineation that it's solely for consumerism and like PR and being able to separate, when in reality everything is much murkier than that.
Yeah, everything is so much more connected,
and why it's rampant in the realms of academia, because in academia you have to have, this is what I'm studying.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to designate yourself from something else, and so you have to create artificial barriers.
Actually, one thing I remembered, something that you brought up about like how the letter format is very much like Gothic. I like how, thinking about it now, it's like, I like how this is kind of using those older, almost like a modern Gothic story in terms of its storytelling.
And Gothic's a bad term, because the Gothic tale, I apologize to anybody that actually remembers that I've completely blanked right now, but the Gothic tale is... This is actually a very good modern. I won't call it Southern Gothic because that's a very distinct, but it's a good modern Gothic tale, because the modern Gothic and Gothic in general is about the exploration of an individual. And are they crazy? It's about them questioning their own sanity, their own belief, and then there's a probability that it's not real. The best one is the Fall of the House of Usher. Follow the House of Usher is this individual crazy? Are the twins behind it? Or is this house actually haunted? You can never tell in that one. And it's also written in a style that, it's a letter that's going back. This one is, and one of the big distinctions in writing styles is classical versus postmodern. And there's a lot of rules that involves, but this is clearly a postmodern take on the Gothic.
Yeah, so I mean more like the format and stuff.
Yes.
Not the genre.
Also coming back to House of Leaves, it's also in that regard that, although in this case we know that all this media exists because there is a police report about it at least.
Yeah.
And that's, well, you got to think, like, for the old Gothic, we only have the letters because they're the classical literature of horror and Gothic. Cosmic horror stems from the Gothic, and that the haunted house is now the haunted universe of the Earth.
Yeah.
They all relied on, and this is one of the things about classical, is they all relied on a hyper individual that is hyper specialized to fit the situation. So you have Van Helsing, you have Parker, Harper, and all those groups. Those are the only ones that are able to combat Dracula. So they're the only ones you hear about. In modern society, we realize everybody is kind of equal on footing. Some are better than others. And we have this glut of information from the internet.
Yeah. So
we're able to have a different viewpoint. And that's one of the things in postmodern is always have a different viewpoint of an angle. But with a horror, and especially this type of horror, you need to keep it angled such that you can see the problem without seeing what it actually is.
Right.
So having police reports brings this official one from an official side that might be a little bit more specialized than...
More clinical
side than the writer, or in this case the prisoner, who's bringing the personal edge, who's seen it from himself. And you get these two angles, these two views on this unknown entity.
They're still very hyper-specialized.
They're still very hyper-specialized. But they can't find what's going on. And you get these two very odd juxtaposition angles to see what's going on, and it creates that odd, uncanny valley and the tension that we see in the paper.
Yeah.
Or in the story.
All the race creatures change, but he always has a mind.
They keep getting wiped out.
All right, well, is there anything else you guys have on it, or?
No, I think we've kind of run that well pretty dry. I think we've talked about the story longer than the story takes to read.
Yeah.
All right, and like I said, I will be having a discussion with Dr. Leviathan when I get back from Gen Con. So we'll see what his discussion is. I honestly never know when it comes to creepypastas. Like I'll like send him a message and it'd be like, "Oh, you might like this one," and then he like goes on to it. He pulls out his soapbox and jumps on and starts tirading about it. But I might be wrong this time. So
good thing he doesn't listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
Or this radio show.
Yeah. So that's it for the Gen Con El Dente Rigamortis partial episode. And I have been Review Cultist.
Travis Gaskey.
Matt.
All right. And see you guys in a minute. All right, we're back. So, that was the Gen Con discussion. So, we'll see...
Bye, Matt. What was it, Sam? I can remember.
Matt and Travis were with me at Gen Con, so... yeah, Travis had a lot of... as you'll hear, Travis had a lot of... a lot to say about it, like, on a intellectual level as well. It's very much like you in terms of, like, being very well read, and actually I think he's going to school for some of this stuff, so... It was a nice discussion we had, which you've already listened to. So, anyway. So that is our episode for tonight. Big thanks to the Drunk and the Ugly folks, Matt, Sam, and Travis. It was an awesome reading.
Again, it was a really good reading.
To Stephen Shorter, I really enjoyed the story. He's done a bunch of other ones that have been read by other people and are actually on creepypasta.wiki under his name. I believe it's MrAstroBlast, and including one called A Slender Knight, as in a knight, like chivalry knight, and it's apparently a Slender Man Abysso story, so I might make you do it. But so we'll probably read a couple more of his stuff and do it on the do a discussion of it. Like I said, you can check out some of his stuff on creepypasta.wiki. He's got a Facebook. Drunk and the Spooky do readings of it, but if you look up his stories, most of them have a reading by somebody else on YouTube. And as always, you can send us messages on Twitter at Review Cultist or at Dr. Leviathan. We are on Tumblr at crazonstudios.tumblr.com. I don't think I've ever actually given the full name. I just kind of said type up El Dente Rigamortis for Tumblr. And we're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on iTunes. Send us a review if you would like. That would be awesome of you. Comments and messages are always welcome. We get right to them, essentially, as soon as we receive them. You can also send us emails at aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. That's aldenterigamortis@gmail.com, where you can send us other suggestions for creepypastas you'd like us to discuss on the show. We're also, if you'd like to show your appreciation of the show or show patronage, you can donate on the Tumblr site. We have a donate button, so that's crazonstudios.tumblr.com. And I believe that's it. So, until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
And I'm still Dr. Leviathan.
And this has been Al Dente Rigamortis. Sleep well.